For the last few decades, there's been this huge, monumental push to get every single child in Africa into a classroom. And the enrollment numbers, they shot through the roof. On the surface, it looked like one of the great success stories of our time. But what happens when you look a little closer? What's hiding in the data? Okay, let's dive into this, because the real story is so much more complicated and, honestly, way more interesting.
So this whole thing really gets going back in the 90s. At these big global conferences, like the one in Jumti in Thailand, world leaders all got together and made this massive promise: education for all. The goal was simple, but it was powerful: get every child, no matter who they were or where they came from, into a school. And that promise, it set off this huge wave of policy changes all across Sub-Saharan Africa.
And wow, the results were immediate and they were dramatic. Just take Malawi, for example. In 1994, the country rolled out free primary education. And in one single year, the system had to absorb nearly 1 million new students. I mean, think about that. That's not a typo. An increase of almost 900,000 kids flooded into schools pretty much overnight.
Yeah, and this chart right here just lays it all out visually. You can see the leap in Malawi, from 1.9 million to 2.8 million students in just 12 months. And this wasn't just happening in Malawi. You saw similar explosions in places like Uganda and Kenya. It was hailed as this massive victory. I mean, more kids in school. What could possibly be wrong with that?
Well, that's where we hit our first major plot twist. With classrooms swelling sometimes to over 100 students for a single teacher, this really critical question started to pop up. Is just getting kids through the door the same thing as actually educating them? This is where the simple success story starts to get a whole lot murkier.
Researchers started noticing this problem, and they gave it a name that's, well, it's pretty haunting: silent exclusion. And it's such a powerful idea. It means a child can show up to school day after day for years, be counted in all the official success statistics, but walk away with almost no real functional skills. They are physically there, but educationally, they're completely left out.
And the scale of this problem, it's just staggering. Look at Zambia. After 6 full years of primary school, a third of all students, that's 33%, still can't read properly. Think about that. They've put in the time, they've passed the grades, but they haven't gotten the education. They are the victims of this silent exclusion, a problem those shiny enrollment numbers completely fail to capture.
Okay, so you've got this huge quality issue simmering. But at the same time, there was another area that looked like a huge, clear win: getting more girls into school. But as we're about to see, even this success story added another complicated layer to the whole picture. And look, on the surface, the news really was fantastic. Thanks to a lot of targeted programs waiving school fees for girls, many countries in Sub-Saharan Africa actually did it. That closed the gender gap in primary schools. The goal of having just as many girls in the classroom as boys was being achieved.
Malawi is a perfect case study for this. You can see the country's steady climb, moving from just over 41% female enrollment in 1980 all the way to reaching full gender parity by 2006. This was a hard-won, genuinely celebrated achievement. But, you know the drill by now, that top-line number doesn't tell the whole story.
Because once you start peeling back the layers, you find that progress is just incredibly fragile. Research from 8 different countries found that the gains for girls often help the wealthiest families first, and that progress can easily stall or even go backward. And as girls get older, they're way more likely to drop out than boys. Just look at the example from Nigeria. Between 2002 and 2006, while the school survival rate for boys went up, the rate for girls actually fell. It just goes to show how a national success can hide some really deep inequalities.
And all of this, the quality gaps, the fragile gender gains, it all points to one thing: the single biggest, most powerful factor that researchers have found shapes a child's educational destiny. It's not where they live. It's not even their gender. It all comes down to the wealth of the family they're born into.
So let's just pause and think about this for a second. We know that being a girl can be a disadvantage, and we definitely know that living out in a rural area usually means worse schools. But how do those factors stack up against simple, straightforward family income? Which one matters most?
This slide, this one image from Mozambique says it all. The literacy gap between boys and girls is about 15 percentage points. That's significant, right? But now look at the gap between the richest and the poorest children. It is a massive, staggering 60 percentage points. It is 4 times larger than the gender gap. The data couldn't be clearer. Poverty is the biggest barrier to education, period.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. The researchers who put this data together, Nicholas Ball and Stephen Taylor, they looked at these enormous gaps between rich and poor across 11 different African nations, and they called them truly astounding. That's their word, astounding. It's the kind of finding that just completely reshapes how you see the problem.
And here's another twist. It's not a simple story of steady progress everywhere. It's a real mixed bag. In some places, like Malawi, great news, the gap between rich and poor actually got smaller over time. But in other places, like Uganda, it pretty much stayed the same. And here's the really worrying part. In a country like Nigeria, the gap actually got worse. The poorest children fell even further behind.
So when you take all this in, the silent exclusion, the shaky gender progress, the absolutely overwhelming impact of poverty, it forces you to step back and ask a much bigger question. What are we even trying to do here? What should the real goal of education be?
And that really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? The big takeaway here is that success can't just be about enrollment numbers. Just getting a child's body into a school building, it's simply not enough. We have to totally redefine what we mean by success. We have to start aiming for something researchers call meaningful access. So what does that actually look like? Well, you can think of it as a 5-step journey. Step 1, yes, you've got to get kids enrolled. But then, step 2, they need to actually show up regularly. 3, they need to move through the grades at the right age, not get held back for years. 4, and this is the big one, they need to be engaged in meaningful learning. And finally, step 5, they all need a fair shot at moving on to high school and beyond, especially the poorest girls. This whole package, that's the new benchmark for success.
So I guess I'll just leave you with this one final thought. The question that's at the absolute core of this whole conversation. After decades of effort and billions of dollars spent, if a child sits in a classroom for 6 years but comes out unable to read a simple sentence, have we really made progress at all?